Welcome everyone to the Pursue Power Half Hour. I'm Banu and I'm joined by Kantata's very own VP of Operations, Melissa Korzum. Both Melissa and I have extensive experience leading professional services organizations, but we also work extensively with our customer base at Kantata to help them drive results. So it is with this knowledge that we come to you today to have a discussion on how AI is blowing up the old rules of professional services and reshaping how value is defined, delivered, and monetized. Future-ready PS organizations will position themselves as expertise engines, have to position themselves as expertise engines, not manpower suppliers anymore. Instead of charging for effort and time, we'll have to look at charging for results and impact. So we're going to tackle some topics that are going to allow us to set the roadmap and the how to getting there. We're going to tackle topics like rethinking service product offerings and commercial models. How do we shift talent and resource profiles to account for AI agents and automation? And how do we re-look at measuring performance for our talent pool? How do we rethink the service sales motion and consider transformation in such a way that we can have it done effectively and timely? So thanks for joining us today. And with this, let's get started with Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all recognized at this point that AI is collapsing the gap significantly between effort and impact. And, up until now, services value's really been tied to the hours spent or the complexity of what we've delivered. And that paradigm has been shifting for a while now, right? Customers don't just want results. They care a lot. They want results, but they also care a whole lot about how fast they realize those results, right? They want them and they want them now. They don't want them in 3 months and 6 months. And so we really have to finally address the not just did we deliver what we promised, but did it change the customer's business in measurable ways? Did they get faster adoption, higher margins, better decisions? And did we achieve that in a timely manner? That's the new scoreboard that we're looking at. And we can't kick the can down the road anymore and say it's too hard to figure out how to do that. We have to figure it out now. It's been really hard to navigate that, but now with AI augmentation, it's opening up new ways to achieve those results in a much faster time frame. So that means services organizations are really going to have to change a whole lot of foundational elements. How we price, how we sell, how we deliver, how we measure success, and then ultimately what tools we use to support the way that we drive our business. And, we're thinking a lot about this at Kantata every single day about how our solutions are going to help services organizations address these issues and help their customers achieve results. And that's where we're really focused on things like our expertise engine, where we can really orient around things like increasing time to value, augmenting expertise, and enabling the ability to prove and sell customer outcomes.
We've been doing this podcast for a couple of years, and we've had guests historically that have looked at this outcome-based model from a professional services, commercial model that's based on outcomes and measuring value for the customer. But I think it was more of a distant concept and more exception-based, but it's inevitable. Like this is the shift that has to happen if you want to stay ahead of service delivery and be in the forefront, making margin and staying afloat really in this new era. So with that,
Yeah.
let's tackle specifically commercial models and how do we, from your perspective, how do we make that transition to a outcome-based, impact-based model?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, services went from, what can we do or what are we going to do for you? It started to become, what have you done for me lately, right? Because of the recurring services. And now it's, what have you helped me achieve lately, right? It's not what have you done, but what have you helped me achieve? And that's becoming at the heart of discussions regarding outcomes-based pricing. I mean, even if you're not doing outcomes-based pricing, when you go into a renewal right now, you better be justifying the outcome and the value that you've provided to a customer, or it's really hard to justify a price. And so we're seeing our customers coming to us and saying, what are you seeing in industry? How are people developing service offers where they can confidently define, which is a really hard part of this? You have to be able to define the outcomes that you can achieve and then prove your ability to achieve them. And so the service is being priced at 400 hours. You have to frame that whole thing really around a transformation target, right? How do you get a customer to full adoption within 90 days with a measurable lift in productivity, right? It's not about how do I get to go live anymore. And so now that AI is coming into play, we can probably deliver a better outcome with more value and less hours. But the other thing that I think we're starting to realize is that doesn't always just mean a cheaper price tag. And so there's not only the ability to shift from pricing based on hours. We're starting to think on pricing based on outcome, but we're also bringing in new drivers like what is the cost of an AI solution? AI agents aren't free, right? Developing them in house or going out and buying solutions are bringing new costs into the services industry. And that's a part of the overall services margins that are being considered. So it's a shifting cost profile where you might get some efficiency in some ways and other costs added in, and then the ability to define and improve the outcomes that you're trying to go after.
In addition to the improving of the outcomes, I know we've talked about this, is putting a value on expertise, right? And when you and I were having a conversation, you made an analogy that really stuck with me, which is, you go for within a retail store, if you go to a designer versus Walmart, the output of the value, I mean, who knows? The quality theoretically is better, but you're paying $1,000 for a top versus $20 for a top because of your perceived value in terms of the quality, the output, and the consistency of that quality that it brings you. I think it's a very similar analogy in how we have to start looking at expertise. It's about how we position the expertise and the consistency quality of that expertise that we deliver with the customer.
And the experience that's wrapped around that
And the
expertise, right? I
experience,
mean,
right?
when we look at how much we're willing to pay for services in our lives, let's go outside of, the professional services industry that we're talking about. In many cases, it's the experience that's being provided and the proven ability to provide me with a certain result, right? And so again, creating a better customer experience goes into the value that the customer's perceiving, but there's also a cost to be able to provide that better customer experience as well. So it's thinking more holistically, so much more
Yeah.
holistically beyond what is the dollar or the hour that someone's paying for, right? Dollars and hours are no longer the final equation.
Yeah, exactly. So we know AI isn't replacing people. I think everyone's coming to terms with the fact that it's just changing how we define roles, how we redefine roles, skill sets, and applicability or talent base, right? How, in your opinion, do leaders help their teams shift from doing work to driving outcomes? Because for all this time, we've been positioned to think about utilization and hours spent, and how do you make that shift?
I think it starts really with redefining success at every level in the organization. So instead of celebrating the person who logged the most hours or who had the highest billable utilization target, it's about celebrating someone who helped a client achieve a big business win, maybe their first business win, who created an exceptional experience for a customer, right? And so leaders are going to have to connect those dots for their teams. And they're going to have to show how that expertise drives an outcome and not just a deliverable, because it's a language shift. We've been talking about the result of services and the value of services in a very specific language for a long time. And leaders have to start changing that narrative. That also means leaders have to find new tools and new ways to help surface those signals. It's not always easy to know, especially the larger your teams get, what impact they're having on a customer. It's really easy to know how many billable hours they logged, what their rate per hour is, what their revenue per head is. Those are pretty easy numbers to figure out, but there aren't a whole lot of tools in the industry right now that are surfacing signals that are telling you, what the impact is of a consultant with a customer, right? What does their engagement look like? What does the customer sentiment look like when they're working with that individual? How do we measure that relationship, which can drive a result with a customer? And so it's about finding tools and ways to do that. And so, again, that's really at the heart of when we look at the expertise engine that we're putting into play. It's about going way deeper than how many hours somebody is spending working, but really uncovering the impact of that work, the relationships that they're building, the expertise that they're unlocking, the lessons that they're learning, and how they're contributing all that back to the organization. So it's a much different relationship than what we've seen before.
I have to share a story with you. I have a daughter, 24 years old, that's in environmental consulting company. And I was having this conversation with her. And the reason I'm sharing this, because I think with the new generation coming on, maybe the transition will be easier because they'll understand it. Because she was approaching me saying that, mom, they're asking me for like our utilization. They're saying, we have to keep measuring utilization, and that I need to increase my utilization, etc. But I just don't understand, because I can spend more time, working on a particular project for a customer, but that doesn't mean that I'm doing it any better, or I'm getting the customer to what they need. I mean, I can work faster and better and get things done, but my utilization will go down. So I don't understand that concept. And it was very interesting to have someone at
Mhm.
her age actually pose that question. It's already becoming questionable on why are we measuring utilization? How's that going to define the quality of work that and the outcomes that I'm delivering to my customers? So yeah, I
Yeah,
thought
I
that was really
mean,
fascinating.
we could go deep on this one, right? I think it starts to push against like why 40 hours a week,
Yeah,
Am I logging 40 hours a week or am I achieving the result, right? And I think we are seeing as the younger generation comes out into the workplace, some of those questions are starting to get pushed on. What is a standard workday? Utilization's based on 2080, right? You work
yeah,
40 hours a week.
exactly.
We're seeing flexible schedules, flexible PTO, unlimited PTO. It's about getting your job done and driving a result, not hours worked.
Yeah.
Like it will be interesting to see how that generational change impacts all of this as well.
Right, and how the HR system and everything evolves around it, because there's so much that
Yeah.
has to happen for this change to take place. So going back to skills and roles, what are the critical skills and roles in your opinion, as we take this journey forward?
I think I'd focus on two big ones. The first one, I think we can gloss over really easily, and that's AI fluency. 2 years ago, no one was using AI tools. Now everyone's using them, and they have come fast and furiously. And I get people who ask me all the time, it surprises me, given their technical knowledge and depth, who will come and say, like, where can I learn about this specific area in AI, or how are you gaining, competency in these areas? And so this isn't just about prompt engineering or knowing how to put a prompt in or any of that, but it's about how we train an AI model, right? How do you make sure that what you're putting into that model is really driving and helping it give back to you what's beneficial? And then how do we use it appropriately to analyze, to summarize, to generate insights, and to really augment our expertise? And that's kind of a sweet spot where I think that fluency is a skill that everyone needs to gain, and they need to gain it quickly. And we can't discount how important that is. I think the second one is around outcome design. So we're talking about outcomes based pricing and that sort of thing. And, Banu, the role that you have in the organization, I know you think a lot about this. And it's not natural for everyone to be able to say, here's what my customer's trying to achieve. One, can you define the outcome that they're even trying to achieve? Can you figure out how to measure that? I think we can look at every employee who's ever tried to write a SMART goal, who struggles with defining what a measurable success criteria is, and then how to put an action plan in place. So that AI fluency, coupled with being able to really think about outcome design and having every team member kind of be a value architect. in and of a sense, right? Combining their human acumen with those AI insights to get a clear path for customer impact, that's going to be the sweet spot that we need to continue to push our services team members towards.
A lot of what we are talking about is fundamental changes, right? That touch on culture, system, technology, all of it has to come together to look at, to revolutionize or transform how we look at things. And so I want to spend some time on how do we do that best, right? How do we do that so that we do it in a timely manner, but we're also effective at the end of this journey, right? So what does a crawl, walk, run maturity path, in your opinion, look like in this outcome-driven transformation?
People really need to be honest with themselves about what crawl really means. And for me, it's awareness. It is, do you have the awareness and the language in your company to be able to even change from hours to business outcomes? For example, does everyone in your company know what outcomes your company actually achieves for your customers? If I ask 10 people, are they even going to give me remotely close to the same things, right? If you don't have that language and you haven't even clarified for your company, all the way from marketing to sales to services to success, the whole organization aligned on here are the outcomes we can actually achieve for our customers, you're crawling. Because if you're trying to figure out how to do outcomes based pricing and you haven't even aligned on what outcomes you achieved, then it's just not going to work, right? So to me, crawl is awareness. It's defining the outcomes and making sure that everyone in your business understands here are the outcomes that we can help our customers achieve. I think then you can start to walk, and it's taking that language and that understanding and integrating it into your delivery, into your project plans, your governance decks, your reporting, moving your goalposts. So if you're, an embedded services organization and a software company, your goal should no longer be go live or complete a deliverable. You should be moving towards outcome achievement, right? Your measurement from success is going to start to shift from project health to customer health, and then ultimately customer results. We do this here at Kantata, and we talk a lot about it. We used to celebrate go lives. We now celebrate something called green graduation. The customer went live, that's fine. But green graduation means they're live and they're actually using the system to achieve results. And we are measuring adoption. And we're looking at that with our customers and working with them until we get them to a point where they have met a threshold that we consider green graduation. And then that's when we celebrate, not at go live. That's just a functional technical aspect of getting a customer to results. And notice we're still not talking about selling an outcome or pricing an outcome. That's, I think, when you really get to run. You can monetize after you know the outcomes, after you figured out how to measure them, and you have proven repeatedly that you can actually achieve those outcomes for your customers. Then you can start putting commercial models and renewals around results and proven impact. The trap that people can fall into is to just try to run before they have that measurement discipline, before they have that language and lexicon and ability to do that. And the fact is, you just can't price an outcome if you can't prove it, right? So you have to go through that process to be able to prove that you can achieve that, and then you can put a price tag on it.
To build on what you just already shared, which is where we are within Kantata, right? I think we are at walk, meaning that we started with defining our framework in our entire journey from the time we are engaged in the selection process with a prospect to their entire journey and evolution and optimization with Kantata once they select is positioned around what are the key business objectives that the customers need or have and have made a decision on, and how do we measure results against them achieving those business objectives, right? And this is as we transition and as my organization, the CSM, steps in and tries to be the the backdrop of facilitating, bringing resources. Everyone within Kantata will ask, what is the objective this customer is after? How are they going to measure the results? So we've almost institutionalized this kind of thinking within our organization. And I think we have to work our way to run, which is pricing our packages and revamping our commercial models to actually align with this. But every step of the way throughout the customer journey, we've aligned to actually focus on results. And the important thing to point out is that things are changing very quickly, and what the customer objective was at the time of selection is not going to be their objective a year from now, 2 years from now. It's going to continuously evolve, and the results that they're after is going to evolve. So as you continue to position services, the services and the outcomes you're after will evolve, and you've got to be agile and have a process to account for that.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
When you talk about that agility and the processes and that sort of thing, to me, when we think about systems and processes and how we get that visibility across our engagements, really from sales all the way through to results and renewal and that continuing relationship, it's about having that connective tissue between all of these various systems and communication channels.
Yeah.
One of the things that we really focused on is we should not have to ask our customer repeatedly through the journey, what outcomes are you trying to achieve? What problems are you trying to solve, right? That does not create a great customer experience. Even though they're transitioning through different parts of our organization, we needed to have that connective tissue to continue that narrative through the organization and to make sure that when they left through one door and in through the next, they were being ushered through and they were, being put in capable hands that understood why they were there. And so, we've been at Kantata, and I think as an industry, connecting our CRMs, our PSAs, our CS platforms. I think we're now realizing how critical it is to plug the communication channels in, right? It's where the real work gets done. When we're on calls, when we're, talking to our customers through Zoom or Clary or whatever tools we're using, when we're in our emails, that's where outcomes are getting defined, where they're getting planned, where they're getting actioned, and ultimately where we're discussing the achievement of them. And so bringing in those communication channels as part of that DNA and network and conversation around the customer is how we're going to really be able to track from the sale all the way to the outcome these real-time signals. We're going to be able to pull out augmented expertise and actionable insights. And then ultimately, when you have all that, you plug that into a loop. And now you start taking the lessons learned from that. Here's what we sold. Here's the outcome that we achieved. This is the experience that we got from that, the insights that we generated. And then you can start engineering your services for the future. How do you define and measure outcomes? Well, this is what we've done as we've collected this information through the stream. And then you can start to improve how you scope, how you define best practices, how you engineer your services to help meet your customers' needs. So I think this re-architecting of the way that not only how we take a customer through the journey, which we spent a lot of time on at Kantata, but also how our systems collect and process and use that information to feed signals back to us and help us better deliver for our customers is also a critical component of it.
Focusing a little bit on metrics, the today's metrics around utilization, hours spent, and margin. I'm not sure that margin would ever sort of deprioritize,
No.
But regardless, yeah. How do you see our measurements evolving to the measurements of the future in this framework?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the first thing, which is creating the language. As an organization, defining those outcomes that your companies achieve and then figuring out how to measure them. Um, you have to start somewhere. So, do we have to figure out every outcome that your company can achieve? No, right? So if you're still really just going by utilization, billable hours, time to staff, some of those things, sit down and figure out what are 1 to 3 outcomes that our organization helps our customers achieve, right? Think of the really clear ones that aren't nuanced that you're seeing most frequently across the biggest base of your customers. You don't have to define every single one. Take that metric and then make sure that or take that outcome and make sure that you have a metric or metrics defined around the achievement of that outcome. right? So here's the outcome that my customer can achieve. Here's the way I'm going to measure that. And then bring those measurements into your delivery of your service, right? So it's no longer just about what was the utilization tied to for this team, or even what was the margin. We want to know the margin, but it would be great to know here was the margin and here is the achievement of a metric tied to an outcome. Because I think we can all agree that there the worst thing that you can have is a terrible margin on a project and a terrible outcome achieved on a
Yeah.
project. I think it's much easier to swallow to say, this project didn't achieve the margin that we wanted it to, but it achieved a metric related to a key outcome our customer wanted to achieve really well, because that's an indicator of future relationship with that customer, right? Um, Once you've got those defined, I would say, do you have to go and change your entire methodology and do every single project? I wouldn't. I've seen that happen before, and it results in a lot of frustration and stops and starts and changes. Find a few key projects that make a lot of sense for that particular outcome. Don't go find your biggest, most complex customer that you're working with. Don't go find, some of the harder engagements that you have. Find a customer that is in your, bread and butter, in the space that you work in the most frequently, where you can help them achieve that outcome, and bring that in as part of the success of that service delivery, and start measuring it. Once you can go through that, don't even change the way you bill. Keep your billing exactly the same. If you're T&M, do T&M. Keep measuring utilization, but measure the outcome and the metrics related to that. Once you can do that and show impact, it becomes really hard to do additional projects in the future without having the ability to say, here's what we achieved.
So let's bring this home and leave the audience with sort of actionable steps that they can take for their organizations to allow for this change for their organization. If you can, it's just a set of steps that they can take away and execute on.
The first one is shift the mindset. So, change from, did we deliver to did we make a difference, right? You have to make that mind shift, that shift in mindset in order to have those conversations within your organization. I think making sure that the systems that you have in place are built to drive and track outcomes and not just effort. Find ways to bring that into your systems and your tools and your reports and your governance. um, Redesign what success and progress look like in your delivery. So define progress in customer terms. What does your customer care about? Adoption rates, cost savings, time reduction, whatever it is they care about, start defining progress and success in their terms. um, Start figuring out ways to compound your expertise. I think this is where AI comes in. Your outcomes need to be visible across your teams, not just the user stories, but all the layers underneath. What worked, what didn't work, what lessons did we learn, what best practices did we identify? This is really important because you need those outcomes to be repeatable. And so
Yes.
if you're not capturing that expertise that helped achieve them, you're leaving the guide rails way too wide for that outcome based delivery to continue to be really costly because you're making too many missteps. You have all that information in your organization. You've got to capture it and put it to work. And quite honestly, that's one of the key drivers behind the expertise engine that we're putting together, is to be able to do exactly that. Um, Once you can make those outcomes visible and you can make them repeatable, then you can make them profitable because you can price and scale them with confidence.
That's perfect. You know what? It's been such an enjoyable discussion, and I almost want to repeat this. I don't want to say a year from now, but 6 months, because things are moving so fast. To see actually
Yeah.
the evolution we've come through, our customers have come through, and revisit some of what we've discussed and how we've seen
Yeah,
it play out. So that would be, let's
absolutely.
do that, and in
Yes.
the due time. That'd be great. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Melissa, for sharing such actionable insights on how to prep your business to be more outcome driven. If you would like to see how Kantata can help you solve some of these challenges, please stick around, and our solution engineer will walk you through a quick demo. Thanks again, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again soon for our next episode. Thanks and have a great day.
Hi everyone, I'm Vicky. As we all know, AI is changing everything, not just what clients expect, but how we meet those expectations and deliver value every day. Take something as simple as building a custom dashboard to access critical data you need to make decisions. In the past, it took multiple steps, multiple people, and sometimes weeks to get it right. In an AI-powered environment, that kind of delay just isn't necessary anymore. Today I'm going to show you how Kantata's generative BI tool provides a faster, smarter way to access your business intelligence. With it, you can simply ask a question in plain English and instantly get the insights you need. This gives anyone the ability to create, explore, and edit reports without needing deep BI experience, while surfacing the insights that matter most and saving valuable time. With Kantata GenBI, no previous BI experience is required, because with our solution, anyone can build dashboards with formula using AI and plain English. Kantata GenBI goes beyond surface-level reporting and allows users to scenario plan, anomaly detect, and have predictive analysis. This is an example of an executive summary dashboard designed to give leaders a clear snapshot of their business all in one place. The first thing I'm going to do is ask a question. This is where the power of GenBI really shines. I can ask in plain English any question regarding this dashboard, such as what was the actual versus forecast revenue in Q2 2025. As it's getting that data, you would also have seen that it saves my previous questions. So this is showing me total revenue for Q2 2025 as we asked it to. So my total actual revenue is $890,000 versus my forecast revenue of $1.1 million. That's the rolled up view. But as you can see, there are other charts detailing the information in different ways. Now, what's very cool is if I don't like the chart, I can simply change it. Now, this is all great, but I don't want to have to come in here every time I want to see this information. With Kantata's GenBI, I don't have to do that. I have a couple of options. The first thing I could do is simply share this with other team members. The second thing I could do is post this to my main summary dashboard, the dashboard that we saw initially. And the third and final thing is create a metric generation. A metric generation is a natural language calculation, so I don't need to go and learn SQL or know the Kantata data model. So as an example, I'm going to ask Kantata to calculate billable utilization. And I'm going to build a formula using a description of the formula that I want to create. So for example, actual hours where billable is true divided by the available hours, multiply the whole thing by 100 to make it a whole percentage, and simply build that. As Kantata builds that formula using natural English language, I can then use that formula, copy and paste that formula into reports and dashboards, etc. So the next thing we'll take a look at is anomalies. This is an automated feature that alerts you to anomalies in your data. Think of them as a smart way to do exception reporting. So on my dashboard right now, we can see an unusual data pattern for my actual fees. Usually they're $13,000, and in August they were $0. So Kantata GenBI allows me to explore this anomaly. Now, here are the fees. Here are the fees fairly constant, but on this date, they are $0 or nearly $0. Kantata not only highlights this to me, It also tells me what was contributing to this. You can also play with filters to tailor this even further. Finally then, the next value add that Kantata GenBI can now give your business is data stories. Data stories are a way of letting you create a narrative style insight by combining your existing reports with text. Think of it like annotating your charts on steroids. It gives me a full strategic report that explains my data in natural language English. I don't have to interpret this myself, and it makes a really shareable document or format. So with these, you'll see Kantata can identify seasonal patterns, and even towards the end of this story, an implementation roadmap for the changes. Some pretty cool stuff. I can even change a paragraph into bullet points, just at the click of 2 buttons here. I also have the ability to change the style of the story or the document, again, by a simple click of the button. And finally, I also have the ability to change these. And finally, I also have the ability to change this from a document to a slide deck. Again, a click of a button. All highly configurable, very simple to do, and I don't need to know BI tools to do this. Kantata GenBI for easy natural language insights at your fingertips. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.